I'm going to be doing this in parts, so there's going to be like video glitch interruptions and all that stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do is, well, let me tell you that the pose you have with the palms facing forward is not a bad pose. It's just not consistent with Second Life. Companies will do that, and they will also do an A pose with palms down and in various configurations in order to appease the animator. While you see possibly one character in a game performing animations, it may very well have been made up of multiple meshes. Each one has a rest pose differently in order to accomplish the animation task for that particular purpose, because some animations are more extreme. Now I'm going to add an armature here. I'm going to show you something that you do with rigs. Um, One of the things that will speed up your workflow when you're creating a character, I'm going to this. This brings up a bone and keeps it connected. E is for extrude. I'm going to put on my caps, my key cast thing here. And you'll see that this bone's parent is bone. If I disconnect that, it moves independently. I can reconnect that, Control P, and keep offset. That's so that the bone doesn't move. Now, this bone here, I'm going to flip it in that direction. Let's just call that an arm, and I'll say arm, and I'll say R. Okay, you can say R, you can say right, you can even say right, and you can say right, and you can do dot R and all the other ilk. And if I just click on these bones on this side, for instance, let's do another E. Okay, and I'll just bring that up, and I'll call this something else. We'll call it shoulder, maybe R. Okay, if I shift click and select both of these, I can do, where is it, symmetrize, and they go to the other side with their side designation. You see now it's switched to L. So that's a quick way to create rigs. Alright, so I don't have your material yet. If I go into pose mode here, I'll have to build something. If I hit the X mirror, I can rotate these bones together. I'm holding down the control key to snap it to angles. And what I want to do here is I want these bones to have a rest pose of its current angles. So I'll say apply pose as rest pose. Now when I go into edit mode, it doesn't go back to where it was. Now let me show you what happens when you do that in pose mode, and then you go into edit mode, it snaps to its rest pose. Now if you want to get your pose back, hit A for all the bones, Alt R, and just in case there's a motion on it, you say Alt G. So for instance, Alt G will bring that back. It's G is for grab, which is move. Alright, so now my arms are out. I'm going to build a quick mesh to show what we should be doing for Second Life. That'll be the next portion of the video. Alright, I made I made a little arm thing here to show, to represent kind of what your avatar is looking like as far as the angle goes. So this is the palm forward, and it's going towards the negative X direction, negative Y direction right here. You can tell that this is the negative because it doesn't have a pole on it. The positive has the pole on it that connects to the Y, you see. Anyway, so this is the normal angle or orientation of a rig when you make characters in Blender, except we would usually like the arm, the palm facing down. That's not always correct. Once in a while we do have the palms facing forward, but for Second Life it's always going to be down if you're going to utilize the in-world animations. Now let me just animate this object for a minute. I'm going to animate the rig to show what happens when I start doing the skinning. Okay, so first thing I need is a reference pose. I need to select all of my bones. I'm going to go into pose mode. 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 I'm going to go and get a key set. And I'm going to use rotation because that's all we need here. And I can key it using this here. Also, you can key it using the I key, and I'll use that next. I'll just rotate these bones down a little bit, and I'll select all, or I can just select the two that have moved. That works as well, but you can select all. You don't always want to do that for full rigs. So if you can keep to just the bones that you moved, then that's better. If you just key the bones that move, sometimes you can't get away with that. I'm also going to animate these forward. So I'm going to go sideways, and I want them to animate on their local axis because I don't want them to look goofy when you can see that the gizmo is now angled along the Y there. So I'm going to animate this, and I'm going to choose the axis, which is going to be about the X, which is the red. So I'll say R for rotate, then I'll hit the X key, and then I'll just move that bone, and they should both have moved. So that's a natural position for them to be in, and I'll select both of these, and I'll hit my I key, and that animates them. So now we'll just do this one. We'll just do this one motion, and I'm gonna save my file and get back to this in a moment. I guess I'll mirror these to the other side when I'm done. Okay, I called them flat people. Now that's not the position we want the bones in. So let me go get a Second Life rig. I'll go into rig creation and add that. And let's say, for instance, well, this will be our root bone. We don't need one of these, but since I have one right here, I mean, I can just wait. Let's go into edit. I can just bring this down right here and call it root. Right? I will call it root. I don't want this to actually do anything. I'm going to turn deform off. But I do want a pelvis bone. I'm going to duplicate this, Shift D. I'm going to make a pelvis bone, and I want it to be anchored to this, so Shift click that and Control P and keep offset, not connected. I'm going to call this, well, I'll call it pelvis. Alright. And I want that bone to be about the same height as the Second Life one. Now since we're making a custom rig, I don't have to scale someone else's rig, so I'll just bring the pelvis up where it belongs, right next to that. So in order to do that, I'll go into my front view, and I'll just I'll look for the pelvis, and I'll put see the balls there. The ball, this ball here is the tail, and the other side is the head. And I want the head to be where the other head is, and that is the actual bone location. That's the joint. The other stuff is just for internal purposes. So what I mean by other stuff is that tail piece right here is just a visual, and the octahedron here is also just a visual. It's just something to give you an idea where the bone is connected to. They don't actually do anything unless you're skinning, and then that's considered the length of the bone. Alright, so now we have a pelvis, but these arms are connected to the wrong spot, and I want my guy to have, well, we're going to do a custom ring, so I'm going to extrude this here, and I'm going to call this, we'll call it stomach. I forget how to spell stomach. I'll call it stummo. Hey, stummo's fine. Alright. Then I go E, and then this will be chest. And then I'm going to E again. I'll call this, well, what do we have? We have a neck, and then we have a head, right? So let's do the head. I'm just going to put all these bones in. Doesn't matter. So, head. Alright, we're all set. Good. So, let me reorient. Let me think about where I'm going with this. I'll start the video again. Okay, so um, we want these arms to point in a different direction. So I'm not going to do any legs here, just because this is really just an example video. I want to rotate my arm so that it's facing down, so that the palm is facing down. So I'll hit my rotate, right? Let's see if I can do this. I'll hit the rotate. You see the red is the x-axis, so I want to rotate about the x. So R to rotate, then hit the x, and then I can do, like, I don't know, 90 degrees, and that should work. Then I should apply object, apply rotation. I'm going to apply rotation and scale, and you'll see that there is a little orange dot that indicates the origin or the pivot of the object, and since it's in an unusual spot, it's not very useful to us. So I'm just going to put the pivot right to the center of the world, and I just do object set origin to like 3D cursor, and you see that little lifesaver, that's the 3D cursor. But a more generic way to do this is to object apply location. All right. And now I can skin this arm. Now before we do that, let me go into wire mode. I'm going to show you something. You'll notice that I kept this object separated a little bit just for visual reference. We want our mesh to bend. In order for a mesh to bend, you need detail. So I have detail just at the bendy bits. You'll have detail different places, you know, depending on how you want your object to smoothly deform across axes. But you'll notice here, let's see, um, you'll see the arm bend in that direction here. Maybe I don't want to do that. Well, I'll do that. I think it'll make sense. I'm going to skin this directly to the bones now by just selecting. I select my my mesh, then I shift click the armature, and I do Control P for parent, and I say with automatic weights. Now when my armature animates, it will bring the mesh with it, and you'll notice that it bends nicely along the broken area there. Now you don't need a broken area, but you do need enough detail for it to bend so it doesn't look all goofy, and you've experienced goofy already, and that's part of the issue going on. I'm going to mirror this object here to the other side, and it's useful to have your origin at the center of the world when you do that. So let's see if mirror will work across the axis, that particular axis. So where is mirror? See if I can find it, and it does. I'm going to apply this because we're going to get into some weird situations if I don't apply it. So apply that. Now I have one mesh, and it should have also applied the skin weights to the opposing side. Well, let's see if it did, and it worked good. So Blender did a good job there. Alright, to make a complete tutorial here, I'm going to map these arms. I don't have to really worry about the spine here unless I'm making a head, and I'm not going to do that right now unless I need to example some more things, and I think I've covered this particular section pretty well. I'm going to map these bones because they're not compatible with Second Life. And you really do want to use the mapper and not just physically name the bones, because you want to have a lot of control over your rig. You want to be able to name them the way you want and do anything you like with them. One example of the reason why you want to do that is, for instance, if I make a separate bone, let me bring this forward first, in front. If I make a separate bone as a controller, if I go Shift D and I duplicate that bone, see who's connected to. He's connected to the wrong one. So I'm going to Shift click that, Control P, and I will keep offset. This bone is going to be not useful. I'm going to turn deform off because we don't want it to do anything except what I'm about to do right now, which is going to be, let's see, hand L, hand I K, hang on, I K L, and I'm going to mirror that across the axis, so it should show up on the other side as well. All right. I'm going to make this an inverse kinematic bone so it does some fun stuff with our arm. And in order to do that, I have to go into pose mode. So I'm going to add a controller here called IK, inverse kinematics, and I'm going to pick the target. Actually, no, I don't pick a target. I just tell it the bone change. So 1, 2, 3. I'll put a 3 in here. Oops. And then I can just move that, and it will move the other bones there. Let's try 4. Just you hit G for grab, and then it just moves the other bones. It's kind of neat, huh? So we can do that and make animations from that. Anyway, that's not the lesson you're learning here, but I wanted to show you that you can do that. I'll go back into object mode. Let's go over to the Snap Mapper, Visual Snap Mapper, and I want to remove this old rig because we're not going to use it anymore. And I want the Snap Mapper to create its own rig, so click Action. Great. I'm going to hide my mesh, and I can do that right here. Hide the mesh. And I'm going to start mapping bones. And let's say I have 1, 2, 3 bones. I don't want this bone. That's not a functional bone. That's just to move my stuff around. So I have 1, 2, 3. I have 3 bones. Now I can map these manually, which I'll do on this side, and I'll start with the collarbone. I can map these manually, or I can do a little automatic fill thing, and I'll do both. I'll do manual mapping on this side and automatic mapping on the other side, so you can see the difference. So I select one bone, and all I did was click it, and then I clicked this. I don't have to shift select. I don't have to make sure that both of them are selected, but everybody knows the order, and I just map those. And I'll do the same thing going down the chain. And we're done at that particular point, but if you had fingers, you'd do those as well. And the fill tool will help you with this, with the hands when you get to the fingers. So I'm going to select the end bone on this one, and I know there are 3, 1, 2, 3, so I count backwards, 1, 2, 3, and then I choose how many to fill with, and that's 3, and click the fill tool. Now I've got those. So now these are mapped. If I want to map the pelvis areas, I can do that. It's those two here. Map these bones. Oops, what was that? These bones. Deformable is enabled. Oops. Let's go check that. Is deformed? Deformed wasn't enabled on the pelvis. That's why. I could have chosen a thing in here, but to disable that check. But we do want that deformable. So map these, and we'll just go up the chain here. Map these, just in case we use these later. Okay. Map these, and there's 2 more. There's the neck, and then there's the head. Now watch out for the skull bone that's at the very end. You don't have a use for that, at least not yet. Alright, now the map stays with the rig, so now I can save my map if I want. I can put it into like temp. Are my eyes working? What am I missing? Do I have any temps in here? I'm going to say temp. Yeah, it's in there. So I saved it. So you can always load that back up if you lose it, but again, it stays with the rig. So if you save your file here, it's fine. You can reset the stage. It's not going to damage it. I'll save my file. And then let's show our mesh again. Alright, now we're ready to bring this into Second Life because it's all mapped. There's a couple of ways to do that. The most consistent way that would give you the least amount of problems, especially if you're wearing this as an avatar, is through the character converter. If you enable make copy, it'll make a copy of the entire set before it converts it so that you don't damage the original. You definitely want to save your work here in case you don't do that. But if I click convert, you'll see it makes a full copy of everything that's necessary, and then I can just export it right from here. Now, just for gits and jiggles, I'm going to export the animation as well. But okay, I made a mistake here. What I want to do is delete all the other associated items. Everything is selected before you export, so let me do this again. You can click the mesh or you can click the armature. and make sure make copy is enabled. Okay, I'm just repeating this because I made a mistake and I deselected the things. Convert and then export, and once it's done exporting, you still have all the stuff selected. You just have to hit the delete key, and then you still have your original there. All right, so let's also export the animation, because that's going to be a little fun. So I select the rig, and I go into character tools, retarget motion, and I can just put a little distance on this for a visual so I can see the rig that ends up behind it, and just say action, and you'll see this rig will move with the other one like it should. All right. Now, you probably expect that the arms should bend at this elbow here, but that's not what we did here. We didn't map these to the elbow. We mapped these. This is a custom character, so we're going to actually process this as a custom character. In order to do that, I'm going to have to use glue on my snap mapper. That's not something you're going to use with your particular rig. So I probably shouldn't have come here, but I'll reset the stage, and we're not gonna export the animation for now. I ran into a little flaky area. Let's just go into Second Life and see how the arms look. Alright, so these arms are gonna bend kind of weird with the existing animations. So maybe I will upload the other one. And we need joint positions for our custom rig. Now, what's showing here is the Second Life representation of what they think we want to do, and they're using a biped. So whatever, we don't know. This is what this is. This is what we did. This is our stick figure, and it works. It does exactly what we asked it to do. And if I bring in my animation, you'll see it's a perfect representation of what we have in Blender. So let me go do that now. Yeah, so I'll do that. Character tools. Well, we're going to use the retargeter, but we need to use glue when doing it so that the bones stick directly to it. And that's not the kind of thing that you would do for a normal avatar. It's for a custom rigs. And I think what you're wanting to do is use SL's existing animations. But just to show that this works properly, because we need to use glue, I'm going to use a different tool. And I'm going to go to bone control. Make sure I send my animation range, which is from 1 to 40, to the animation tool, and I'm going to snap the bones. And the benefit of using this particular tool is that when I'm done, I can just delete the rig. I don't have to reset the stage. Now, this is only for custom mesh. You can't use this for typical in-world avatars. It has to be a very custom rig, and you'd have to make all of your own animations if you go down that road. Let's export this frame 40, and I want it to repeat just so I can see. Actually, I'm going to edit the animation so that it loops differently. I'm going to select all the bones, right, and I'm going to marquee select the first frame, Shift D. I'm going to duplicate it over to frame 80 so I have a smooth loop so when it runs, and I'm going to put this at 80 so that I can test it out. Alright, so that's what it's going to do in Second Life. So now I'm going to acquire, so because I changed the frames, and priority 4, I want it to loop and export. Let's see what we get here. I've been goofing with the code. Right, the rig is not flagged. So this is actually the beta code I'm working on right now. 30. So I'm expecting errors, but that wasn't an error. That was a goof up on my part. I need to. That's not it. Bone control. I need to snap the bones again because I didn't have an animation rig. animation export and export the animation. There you go. When that stops turning red, unless there's an error, it's done. Now I can just delete that and go into Second Life. Alright, when we use our own animation on this custom set, it'll look right. That's probably not what you're doing, but you see, now it looks good. Alright, so this should be an interesting introduction, and there's going to be more information required before you can really understand how to make a character, but this should get you started.